Hey everyone, Ryan here and welcome to another episode of BGP Game Dev. In this episode, I'm celebrating over 1 year of being an Atari VCS developer and my experience developing games on the Atari VCS. So just to reiterate, I first heard of the Atari VCS as the Atari box back in 2017 and initially had no interest in it in January of 2024 when I was rejected by Nintendo for the 4th time, and when I was down in the dumps about it, I stumbled upon this video by my good pal Eli of Treefall Studios talking about his experience with the Atari VCS. So I joined the old Atari VCS Discord, which is now the Atari Club Discord, and had a meeting with David Page, who works in the marketing department of Atari, and I was signed on as a developer after pitching Popcorn Rocket and was given an Atari VCS to use both as a regular console and a dev kit, and that started my Atari obsession even though I was more of an NES kid. And while I became an official Atari VCS developer back in February of 2024, I wasn't able to release Popcorn Rocket on the Atari VCS until July of 2024 since, as a Game Maker developer, the native Game Maker controller code wasn't working with the Atari VCS since it runs a Linux-based operating system. I was able to use a plugin called Input Candy from Lost Astronaut Studios, which got things to work, but Atari and Game Maker's updates did not cooperate well for several months as the game would crash and freeze a lot until Game Maker updated their runtime in June of 2024 and the game was finally working properly, so I was able to release the game in July of 2024. And I gotta say, as a Game Maker developer, the Atari VCS was probably the longest time I spent porting a game, but the Nintendo Switch was still more difficult to port to. Luckily, once all the updates between Game Maker and Atari began to cooperate, and after I got all of my controller code working with the Input Candy plugin, Popcorn Rocket on the Atari VCS runs incredibly smooth and the game saves work properly, and I will admit Popcorn Rocket on the Atari VCS still runs far better than the Nintendo Switch version. Now, I can't give away exact sales numbers due to NDAs, but I will say that I've earned enough from the Atari VCS release of Popcorn Rocket since July of 2024 to be able to purchase an Atari Jaguar, the Atari Jaguar CD, and several games at current eBay prices. I didn't exactly buy the Atari Jaguar and the Jaguar CD yet, but I plan to in the future, and all the money that I've earned from the Atari VCS has gone into other things, but that's the ballpark of how much I've earned so far from the Atari VCS. While it's not even close to doing game dev full time, I was pleasantly surprised how well the Atari VCS performed even as a niche console. And I will say the best part of developing for the Atari VCS is the dedicated and hardcore community who plays the VCS and actually likes playing new games and are definitely very hardcore about leaderboards, which I still haven't figured out yet how to implement as a Game Maker developer, but maybe one day. I've met so many cool players, developers, and I really appreciate the Popcorn Rocket YouTube videos made by the Atari community and how much they enjoy the game. Sadly, several of my fellow Game Maker developers have shunned the Atari VCS, so I'll definitely say it's their loss. I mean, Game Maker developers have it much harder to develop for the Atari VCS than Unity developers, but once you get past the initial hurdle of making your controller code work, VCS development is a breeze, and the back end of Atari's developer portal is by far the easiest to work with out of all the consoles, and I know for a fact that Atari actually does want more developers to make games for the VCS, but however, it's not as straightforward to become an Atari VCS developer like the other console platforms. There's a sign-up page with an email to contact, but I didn't go that route and had to go the Atari Discord route to talk to David Page, aka DavPa. I have a link to the current Atari Club Discord in the link in the description below. Your best way to become an Atari VCS developer is to go to the Atari Club Discord and look for David Page under his handle DavPa and talk to him there. David is usually pretty busy, so it may take a while to get in contact with him, so just keep that in mind. Now, you will have to talk to him personally via Zoom and pitch your game to him, so make sure you do approach this like an actual job interview, and David's a cool guy to talk to and is very dedicated to helping out the Atari VCS community. Also, one of the best things about the Atari VCS is how small the store is. You can easily browse through the entire VCS store since there aren't that many games on it, which does make your game easier to find, and it doesn't get flooded out as much like the other consoles. And I did get a massive boost in sales last year in 2024 when Atari put the VCS on sale for Black Friday and also did a Black Friday sale for the VCS store. Atari doesn't do as many sales as the other platforms, but I have benefited from every sale I participated in so far and have seen really good results. However, there is some controversy surrounding the Atari VCS, like how the Atari 50 DLC wasn't coming to the Atari VCS or GOG, and how current CEO Wade Rosen doesn't really support the Atari VCS. The Atari VCS did come out before Wade Rosen took over, and Atari is more dedicated to their Digital Eclipse brand and current consoles. Several people have complained that the Atari VCS seems to always be pushed away to the side when it comes to Atari's priorities, and while I can understand understand that Atari is no longer the massive company it was before and needs to think about the current market, I do feel the Atari VCS should get a little more attention, especially since it flew off the shelves during the 2024 Black Friday sale, but not enough games have been coming out for the Atari VCS. I took advantage of this sale to get myself a second Atari VCS, which I use strictly for dev, since it's a pain to switch between dev mode and the regular Atari OS. And I do also feel that Atari needs to make the VCS developer sign up more streamlined like the other platforms. I do understand this may result in a ton of submissions for David Page to handle, and the current sign up system does lessen the workload a bit, but Atari does want to get more indie devs on their console, and I do think they should make it easier for devs to sign up since some developers may not want to use Discord. Now, you're not gonna make quit my day job money with the Atari VCS, but I'm surprised how well it's performed for me, and as long as Atari continues to support it, I think it's an amazing console for developers to put their games on, and has been one of the most chill and awesome gaming communities out there. Atari was before my generation, but now I've really begun to understand the importance of its impact it made all those decades ago, and I'm glad to be part of its legacy. I hope to release all of my future games on the Atari VCS in the near future. And with that said, this ends this episode of BGP Game Dev. I'm Ryan, and later, gamers.
What could possibly go wrong?
Have you played Atari today?
Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to check out these other videos, and also make sure to follow me on social media and check out the official Battle Geek Plus website. Take care.